Dragon's Dogma 2 has had a bit of a weird release week. Some people absolutely love it and are proclaiming it an early candidate for Game of the Year, and if it wasn't obvious, that's me, squarely in the centre of that camp, while others have claimed it to be a disaster, a mix of poor performance issues, microtransaction controversies, and just straight up dislike of game design decisions, causing some to dismiss it outright. Now, some of that criticism is harsh, but there's no doubt the game launched with some issues that desperately needed ironing out. Sadly, like a lot of AAA games that drop nowadays, there were some features missing on launch that really do feel like they should have been there from day one. The ability to start a new game without dipping into your game files for a start. But good news, everyone! As of today, Capcom has released the first title update for Dragon's Dogma 2, and it basically fixes all the valid complaints someone might have had for the game. Although if you didn't like the game's mechanics, well, you're out of luck there, I'm afraid. The biggest change this new update brings in is that aforementioned ability to start a new game. Inexplicably, Dragon's Dogma 2 launched without this ability, despite coming with New Game Plus boxed in and ready from day one. It's become a bit of a habit for devs on new releases to leave the New Game Plus unfinished so that it can be released a little ways after the main game launches. Whether due to not wanting players to rush through their first time playthrough, or just not quite managing to get it done in time for launch, hard to say. But Dragon's Dogma 2 broke the mold in the most Dragon's Dogma 2 way possible by including New Game Plus from the start, but not a way to start your game fresh, although PC modders quickly worked out a way to force the game to allow it. Thankfully, that workaround is no longer required, and neither, it turns out, is worrying too much about your character's appearance in the initial character creator. The game, and Capcom, whether rightly or wrongly, took a lot of flack this week when it was revealed that you could buy Art of Metamorphosis items in the game store for real-world money that would allow you to re-customize your character's look. Now, the added context of that is that these items are fairly easy to find if you search for them in the world, and are available at pawn guilds to buy with in-game gold. But they've made them far more abundant, presumably to acknowledge some of that initial player pushback. They've boosted the number of Art of Metamorphosis items available at pawn guilds from a very miserly 2 to a much more generous 99, so if you really want, you can stock up as many as you like, reducing that potential impact of having to fork out $2 for that cosmetic item once you've exhausted your in-game purchase slots. And if you somehow need more than 100 rounds of changing your character, well, starting a new game almost looks like a better option at that point. Another very welcome change in the update is that the quest giving players the chance to purchase their own house, Dragon's Dogma 2 is a fantasy game after all, is now available much earlier in the game for all players, potentially making the cost of having to rest in inns over and over again a little easier to deal with. It's also worth bearing in mind that once you get to Back Batal, you can buy a house almost immediately there as well, but unless you ride over the border on the Sphinx or something, like I did, you're looking at getting that much later in the game than the house in Vernworth. There's also, PC players in particular will be very pleased to hear, a ton of graphical and performance improvements in the works, and some are included with the patch, and that includes PS5 too. Xbox players, your time is coming, but this patch needs a little more baking in the oven for your consoles. These tweaks included the ability to toggle motion blur and ray tracing, which honestly is a big W for those of us cursed with motion blur sickness, and frames per second enjoyers rejoice. Well, a little bit anyway, because Capcom has added the option to switch frame rate to either variable or max out at 30 FPS. Although Capcom did say that the motion blur and ray tracing won't affect the frame rate issue significantly, it will help, and bigger changes are planned further down the line to address the problems. Dragon's Dogma 2's frame rate has been one of the biggest criticisms levelled at the game, to the point where Capcom has come out and explicitly linked the frames per second to stress put on CPUs by the large number of NPCs all doing their thing at once. It's a very valid criticism, but clearly sacrifices must be made for immersion, I suppose. And that's it, everything you need to know about Dragon's Dogma 2's latest patch and all the fixes it brings into the game. Are you enjoying the game so far? Is this patch enough to pull you in if you aren't? Let us know what you reckon down in the comments, and while we've got you here with us, YouTube is recommending the perfect video that we've made especially for you, so why not check that out right here.